Hello everyone, now today we're going to be talking about Sky Strikers, specifically Furion Sky Strikers. I find myself thinking more and more how important it is to have a deck that can go effectively going second in the current meta with how restrictive everything is, and to be honest I felt like bringing it back to a deck that's specialized in going second, and that is Sky Strikers. This is it's very similar to the deck list that we hit Diamond 1 with last season. A couple of small changes, for example adding in Imperm and things like that, but ultimately the list isn't too far removed from what we were already playing. But yeah, 100% it's just regular Sky Strikers playing a little Furion engine. Very powerful, very fun as well, honestly. Being able to just decimate boards using Droplet, Lightning Storm, Imperms, being able to pop a bunch of cards as well off your Sky Strikers. It's just really good. So we're going to be going through a card for card list at the end of the video, so stick around for that and do watch the gameplay so you can get the grips with some of the basic combos. And if you like what you're seeing and you want to see anything more like this, again, feel free to subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything and it does help me out, so I would appreciate it if you don't mind. And with that, let's get into game number 1. Alrighty, now with this deck you're going to be choosing to go second most of the time, which means you really don't mind losing a coin toss. It looks like we're going up against a Branded here, sending the Tragedy to the graveyard from their hand off of the Branded opening. Really powerful opening play here from our Despian friend. They're going to go Aliber now to search their deck for a Branded spell or trap card. They grab their Branded Fusion. Now luckily for us we do have that Ash Blossom there, saving it for the Branded Fusion. We're going to hit that and hopefully then negate the Branded Fusion, and we do so successfully, which is very good. So that should be pretty much the end of their turn. Yep, absolutely. They play a card face down and pass back to us, which is perfect. We're going to play our Upstart Goblin first of all, just to see if they have any responses. We have Lightning Storm. They are going to respond to our Lightning Storm by using a Maxi, which, you know, we didn't really like the thought of giving our opponent any more cards, so we're going to quickly chain to cover our Sky Striker Mobilize linkage, pitching our Lightning Storm to the grave to summon Shizuku from our hand to take out the back row. We then do, this is a small misplay here where we summon out the Ray as well. We were thinking about just getting extra damage across the board, but we really shouldn't have. We're going to add Engage the hand off of our Shizuku's effect for our following turn, but right now our Widow Anchor is not live because we summoned the Ray. A misplay from us, and something to learn from as well, so that's why I wanted to show this one off. We've got the Branded Fusion being set back to our opponent's field here, then being activated to play the Lobelion, the Searing Dragon. Now they're pitching a card from hand to grave the Fusion summon into Mirror Jade, so now we're having to cope with the full impact of a Branded, a Royal Rare Mirror Jade. Absolutely beautiful. They're going to take out our Shizuku here, then they're going to pass back to us. That is completely fine. We still have a second Lightning Storm in our hand, so we can utilize that going into turn number 4 here. So we're going to draw top deck into an Ash Blossom, which isn't amazing, but it's also not terrible. We're going to wipe out all of these spells and traps on the field, forcing him to utilize his cards right here and right now, which isn't necessarily even the worst thing for our opponent here. They're going to fuse 2 into Masquerade the Blazing Dragon, while then using the effect of the Ad Libitum that they had to resurrect the Mirror Jade that they just banished. But we do manage to wipe out a Super Poly. So they have basically 2 Super Poly-ish cards set down. We're going to activate our Mobilize Engage, grabbing a Ray and drawing us an extra card. We draw in the Upstart Goblin, which we will now activate, drawing an extra card. We draw into Widow Anchor here, so we're going to normal summon Ray. He's going to try and banish us off of his monster here. We are going to tribute the Ray. And now we're going to Widow Anchor. We're going to activate this, pay 600 life points as cost, and we're going to chain to it the second Widow Anchor. We're going to negate and steal both of your monsters. We don't want to be dealing with these anymore. So basically we take the Masquerade, we take the Mirror Jade, negate their effects. Ray summons out Kigari to the field. Kigari up at 2100 attack points, about to go up by an additional 200. We can't change the Masquerade's battle position, unfortunately. We add Engage back, but we can't activate it just yet. What we were going to do is link off their monsters to summon out whatever the hell we wanted. And yeah, it's pretty much lights out from there. Our opponent didn't really have the ability to come back from that one, so that's just it. Sometimes it just doesn't go your way. But that is it for game number 1. Let's get into game 2. Alright, getting into game 2 here. A bit of an interesting hand. The Regulus actually posing a bit of a problem here. We do have the Max C though, so we're going to activate Max C in response to the Diviner of the Herald's summon, which means that our opponent basically has to stop playing their turn now or they're going to give us a whole bunch of cards. They add the White Relic of Dogmatica to their hand. They're going to activate their Ritual spell, banishing the Herald from the graveyard to summon out their White Relic, giving us one card, and I believe they simply pass turn there. Oh no, sorry, they Synchro Summon up into Baron de Fleur. Very good Synchro Summon. That gives them an Omni Negate, but they did also give us our Widow Anchor. They have Maxi of their own, which would explain why they were so confident. Whenever they were just ending their turn like that, we're going to set 3 cards and pass back to our opponent here. We're not overly concerned because we do have some negates here. They're going to target a card in the field and destroy it. We're going to activate our Widow Anchor just to see if we can use him, get him to use his negate. Apparently we are not going to be doing so, but that means that negate is gone for the rest of this turn. They're going to use pre-preparation of rights. We're going to activate the 3rd Max C of the duel, which means that again our opponent's going to have to either hold off on playing the game or they're going to give us a whole pile of cards. They decide by the looks of it to hold off on it. They're going to swing directly for 3k and then end their turn. So they still have their Baron de Fleur negate. But we do have a way to control the board at least a little bit. Having the Ash Blossom in hand didn't really add very much to it. We are going to be able to Lightning Storm now, however, to take care of the Baron de Fleur. He tries to stop it, but we're going to activate our Widow Anchor and then our Linkage, just so we can get some actual plays going here off the back of what's happening here. So Linkage is going to send Lightning Storm to grave to summon Hayate. Widow Anchor is going to negate and, well, just negate, sorry, the Baron de Fleur, and then destroy it off of Lightning Storm. We're going to attack with Hayate, deal 15 directly, use its effect to send Engage to graveyard, so now we can link off into Sky Striker Ace Kagiri. Kagiri then is going to add the Ace from the graveyard back to the hand so we can now play it. I believe we have enough spells engraved to draw off of the Engage as well, so we're going to add Shark Cannon as well as Jamming Waves. Well, sorry, we just drew into the Jamming Waves. We grab Shark Cannon because we want to steal their Baron de Fleur. While yes, it cannot attack, it is more than able to activate its effects. Now our Furion King Regulus is able to come out to the field, equipping on the Hayate from the graveyard before we link off into Shizuku to finish off our turn, which will then allow us to search our deck for multi-roll for our following turn. We could have potentially grabbed something else, but multi-roll is very powerful. So we have 2 Omni Negates here. Our opponent goes for their Ritual spell. We're going to activate Baron de Fleur's effect, and now it's once per face up negate, stomping their Ritual spell. We have one more with the Furion here, but our opponent simply does not have the ability to play through this level of interruption, and they're forced to end the game. So again, pretty solid performance there, lots of control, showing off the Shark Cannon, stealing some of your opponent's most powerful monsters from the graveyard. You love to see it. Stealing something like a Baron de Fleur or some other really powerful monsters from the graveyard in particular is always just such a nice feeling. But yeah, there you go, there's game number 2. Let's get into number 3. Alrighty, getting into game 3 here. This one should be a bit shorter than the previous ones. We're up against a Labyrinth. Welcome Labyrinth now being activated here. Then we're going to set 2 and pass. So we have a Lightning Storm in hand, which is of course, you look at that and think that's an instant KO here against a deck like this. Lightning Storm, they go Dimensional Barrier and choose Exceed Monster, which is interesting. I guess they were worried about Numerons, but that's not what we are playing. We're going to wipe out all of the back row, but one of the cards that we wiped out was Waking the Dragon. This went from being one of the easiest matchups on the planet to being one of the most difficult. Summoning out the Naturia Exterio, it is outright impossible. Naturia Exterio has the ability to infinitely negate spells or traps by sending a card from the top of their deck to the graveyard and banishing a different card from their grave. So it doesn't matter how many cards we chain. If we had a monster in hand, then we would have been able to use Droplet to negate the Exterio. But unfortunately, we simply did not. So look, we activate all the cards we can, getting up to Chain Link 7. All of our spells get negated, get destroyed, and we scoop it up. So just a very, very quick one. Wanted to show off that you need to be careful around Waking the Dragon. It's not really something you can predict, but just be ready. You're going to lose to it at least once. So just be ready for that. Let's get into game number 4. Alrighty then, getting into our fourth and final duel here, going second. They're going to open up with Jack in the hand, revealing that they're playing Flounderies. Now, Flounderies is pretty much, in most cases, going to be an almost instant L depending upon your hand, because they negate the effects of all special summon monsters that are in attack position. Now, you cannot summon Link monsters in defense, which means that it's very difficult for any Link monster-based strategy to beat Flounderies. So they're going to use their field spell here to normal summon out their Rabina, and then Eaglin, the Eaglin that they banished off the effect of their field spell, is going to add itself back to hand, helping protect the Rabina from being interrupted by potentially an Ash Blossom. They're going to add the Toucan to their hand now that they already have the Eaglin, grabbing the Eaglin from the hand here to grab M-Pen from deck. Now they're able to tribute summon out their Apex Avian, which was an interesting choice here, deciding to go into the Avian over the M-Pen to begin with, adding back the Eagle in the hand, summoning out the Stree then banishing Pot of Duality from the graveyard in order to tribute summon out the M-Pen. So we have an M-Pen as well as an Omni Negate in the form of the Avian. We really do need to top deck a pretty good card here. They're going to add the Stree back to hand, and they're going to get an additional search off of their M-Pen, grabbing Flounderies and the something town, Dreaming Town. So they pass to us then. So this is a bit of a difficult one, but we have the triple upstart Goblin here. We're playing a 37 card deck this game, putting all three of them into the graveyard. And if anyone hasn't picked up on it so far, all of your Sky Striker cards gain additional effects. So if you have at least 3 monsters in your 3 spell cards in your graveyard. So we're able to use Droplet, ditching the Eaglin that he gave us to negate all of his monsters' effects. He's going to utilize his Ash Blossom to stop our Fury on this Colosseum. So we figure, you know what, if it's not going to be doing much for us, we might as well get rid of it and get some value out of it. So our linkage here is going to be activated. It's going to send the Fury on this Colosseum to the graveyard in order to summon out Sky Striker Ace Hayate. Now our Colosseum doesn't do anything unfortunately, but his Stree that was just summoned off of the Dreaming Town trap card is going to be banishing a card from our graveyard in order to conduct an additional normal summon. They're going to summon out Rabina here. Sorry, add back to hand Rabina, then they're going to summon Eaglin. Eaglin then is going to search their deck for a level 7 or higher Winged Beast monster, add it to their hand, and then they will get the option to normal summon yet again. So they're going to search their deck for Razia. Now Razia is the monster that we were waiting on. We knew they were going to search their deck for Razia, so when they summon it out and they activate its effect, we're going to chain now, well, then they're going to activate Stree, but we're going to activate now our Sky Striker Mecha Widow Anchor. We knew the Razia was coming, so we were going to preempt it, stealing it over to our side of the field and negating its effects. So no, you're not bouncing anything this turn, my friend. And instead, you're going to help me clear out this board. So we're going to normal summon Ray just to get as much damage across the board as we can here, taking out all two of his monsters. Sending an engage to the graveyard off of Hayate, dealing 1500 points of damage directly to our opponent. We're going to link 2 off the Sky Striker Ace Zeke. Zeke's effect then is going to activate, banishing itself until the end of our opponent's next turn. We're going to link 1 into Kagiri. Kagiri's going to add back the engage to our hand. Engage then is going to search our deck for a Sky Striker card, as well as allow us to draw 1. We grab multi-roll, as well as drawing into Furion King Regulus. What a draw, because we can now summon this card out to our field by equipping on the Hayate from the graveyard. Lastly, we're going to link out into a Shizuku. We decided to hold on to the multi-roll here. We technically could have done the whole multi-roll shuffle thing to grab back a Widow Anchor, which probably would have been smart, but it is what it is. So we're going to go here. Our opponent's going to reveal Stree, banish the, I believe that was the Unexplored Winds they banished, which means they're really running low on resources and they're going to run out of uses of this field spell relatively soon. They're going to go Eaglin back to hand here, using their Stree to conduct an additional normal summon, but they have nothing to chain block their monsters with. They're going to go Rabina, adding another Stree from deck to hand. They're going to normal summon their Toucan. Toucan's going to try and add back the M-Pen. This is the one we were waiting on, where we're going to now use our Regulus to negate their Toucan, which means they're not adding back the banished M-Pen, and that seems to be the end of our opponent's resources. With Zeke coming back to our field, we're now going to have the option to get gaming here. So Zeke's going to send Shizuku to grave before linking itself off into Hayate. Hayate, of course, being able to attack directly. We're going to activate multi-roll here before activating Sky Striker Maneuver, wiping out the Toucan as well as the face down card here. He is going to negate both the multi-roll and the Hayate for this turn though, unfortunately, but that just sort of is what it is. We're going to activate our Airspace. Airspace is going to send our multi-roll to the graveyard because, again, it's already negated. It's not going to do us very many favors here. We're able to add Hornet Drones to hand. link off Hayate, Hayate into Kagiri. Kagiri's going to add from graveyard back to hand the Engage that we sent there earlier. Engage giving us another search and another draw, but we activated it in the Imperm column like an absolute dunce. We messed that one up. We just take out his monster, we link off into Shizuku here at the end of our turn, and we're just going to have to hope that this is enough to hold our opponent at bay, and luckily for us it is. They have no gas left, no resources remaining, they cannot get their plays going, and you know what, that's as good a win as any. So we did mess up the Engage, of course, by activating it in the Imperm column, but again, you're going to make misplays. It's going to happen, especially when you're up playing this game typically as long as I am. But no, 100%, that is it for game number 4. Let's get into the deck profile. Alrighty, so here is the list we ended up arriving at. A lot of this deck is sort of going second oriented in terms of the external cards you're going to be using. I would say most of the deck should be sort of built as it is, unless you're missing certain cards, but like ideally you'll want to be aiming for something very similar to this. We're going to remove the auxiliary cards here, just the ones that you get to choose. We're going to play the double Maxi. We've got double Ash Blossom. We have triple Lightning Storm. We have double Call by the Grave. We have double Forbidden Droplet. And we have double Infinite Impermanence. Everything else is pretty much core to this version of it. Now, I'm not saying that everything else here is core to Sky Strikers. For example, you don't have to play the Furion package. You can cut that as well if you wish, but it's just... that's sort of the idea of the deck that we're playing at the minute. So this is the core deck. Now, how does it actually work? Well, you're going to be utilizing your monsters to go into a series of different Link 1 monsters, which are going to take advantage of resources in your deck or graveyard and sort of create a resource loop for you where you can outgash your opponent. All of your Sky Striker spells gain additional effects whenever there are more than 3 or more spell cards in your graveyard already, whenever they're used. So basically what you want to be doing is filling up your graveyard with spells as quickly as you possibly can, and basically just using that to gun down your opponent. So we're going to start off with monsters here. Sky Striker Ace Ray is going to be your be-all and end-all of monsters. This card has the quick effect where you can tribute it to special summon out a Sky Striker Ace monster from your extra deck, so you can basically quick effect link summon into any of your aces. It also has the ability where if one of your aces are sent from the field to the graveyard or banished, or is it just graveyard? Leaves the field, so it's also banished. So if one of your Sky Striker aces goes to leave the field, your Ray will then revive herself back to the field, and again, that's during either player's turn, so that's an amazing defensive tool, as well as ensuring you always have the ability to maintain resources. So Ray is phenomenal. You also have Rose, which is less useful, but it's also just as important to have in your deck, especially for a little OTK loop you can do. But Rose, basically, whenever a Sky Striker Ace is normal or special summoned while it's in your hand, you get to special summon it for free. And if an opponent's monster in the extra monster zone is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of one of your cards, while this is in your graveyard, you can special summon it, then negate the effects of a face-up monster your opponent controls. So Rose is decently important. It's not really going to be, you know, starting any crazy one-card combo plays by itself. It can begin, of course, your link chain, because all you need is a Sky Striker Ace monster. So it can get everything going, but it's mainly just here as an alternative target for a lot of your searches. It's here to trigger additional effects and OTKs with linkage and things like that. But yeah, generally speaking, it is definitely a mandatory at least one of. And you can play more of it if you want, but I wouldn't recommend it, is what I was trying to get at. Furion King Regulus. So you can special summon this card to your field by targeting a machine in your graveyard and special summoning this and equipping that onto it. Your machines are, of course, going to be your Sky Striker Ace monsters. So this guy can summon himself out quite consistently, and so long as he's face up, whenever your opponent goes to activate a card or effect, you can send a Furion monster card from your hand or face up in your field to the graveyard to negate the effect. So this works pretty well with this deck because you're able to very easily find yourself a machine to equip on, as well as the fact that he sends himself from field to graveyard in order to conduct his negate. Synergizes pretty well with a lot of your cards because most of your spell cards require you control no monsters in your main monster zone. So Furion works quite well alongside all of that. So that's your monsters, not very many of them. Getting into spells, we've got 3 copies of Upstart Goblin here, basically just playing a 37 card deck, and these cards are especially useful because, like we said earlier, all of your spells gain additional effects when you have 3 or more spells in the grave. So all Upstart Goblin does is it puts another spell in your grave, and draws you a card, which is really, really good in this deck. This is one of like maybe 2 decks that Upstart Goblin is good in. Reinforcements of the army, free spell engrave plus a warrior search, excellent. Terraforming, free spell engrave plus a search for either Sky Striker Airspace Area 0 or Furion's Coliseum. Then you've got your Sky Striker Mobilize Engage, limited to 2. This is definitely the most powerful card in the main deck. It basically allows you to search your deck for any Sky Striker card of your choosing, and if you have 3 or more spells in graveyard, you get to draw out a card as well, and it's not once per turn. This card is insane. It's better than Pot of Greed, which is crazy. So no, absolutely, Engage, mandatory 2 of. You play as many copies of this as you're allowed to. We've got the 1 Afterburners and the 1 Jamming Waves, so they both sort of do the inverse of one another. This will target a monster in the field and destroy it, a face-up monster. This will target a face-down spell or trap card, and both of them basically have the effect where if you have 3 or more spells in graveyard, you can flip it. So with 3 or more spells in grave, you will destroy a face-up monster and a back row card. With 3 or more spells in grave, you will destroy a set spell or trap card as well as a monster. So they sort of double up and do each other's job, assuming you have enough spells. Pretty cool. We've got Sky Striker Airspace Area 0, the field spell for Sky Strikers. You can target another card you control and send it to the graveyard to check the top 3 cards of your deck and grab a Sky Striker card among them and add it to your hand. Occasionally that search is useful. One of its main effects is when it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can special summon any Sky Striker ace directly from your deck, giving you instantaneous access to the likes of Ray. So that's really, really good. Then you have your Furion Disc Coliseum on activation. It will grab Furion King Regulus from your deck. If a monster would be destroyed by battle, you can send a Furion card from your deck to the graveyard instead, meaning itself or your Furion King Regulus. And lastly, if a monster is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can grab a Furion monster in your grave and add it to your hand. So not only is this good for putting additional spells in the graveyard, in the this card itself is a spell, as well as being able to mill out additional copies of itself to protect your cards. It also gives you access to your Omni Negate in the form of your Regulus, so really good. Multi-role here. Multi-role's pretty amazing. Basically, so long as this card is face up, at the end of any turn you will you will set from your graveyard onto your field a number of Sky Striker cards that is equal to the number of different Sky Striker spells you activated during that turn. So if you activate 3 different Sky Striker spells in a turn, multi-role then will activate and will allow you to set 3 different Sky Striker spells during your end phase back to your field, which is amazing for reusing some of your quick play spells, like your Widow Anchor or your Linkage or stuff that we'll get to in a minute. So multi-role is amazing for recycling. It also has its main effect there where you can target a card you control and send it to the graveyard, and for the rest of that turn your opponent cannot respond to your spell card activations, which is absolutely crazy. It makes all of your spell cards unable to be responded to, which is insane. So yeah, multi-role definitely at least one of. A lot of people play it at 2. You can play more of it if you want. I only play 1. I think 1 is fine considering how easy it is to search, but it's up to you. We've got the 1 Hornet Drones, which will basically on activation grab you a Sky Striker Ace token just to help start your link plays. So pretty straightforward, limited to 1, so you'll only play 1. Then you've got the Sky Striker Mecha Widow Anchor, which is one of your main form of interruptions. You can target a face-up effect monster on the field, negate its effect, and if you have 3 or more spells in your graveyard, you can take control of that monster until the end of the turn. So this not only is really good interruption for your opponent's turn and negating their cards, it's also really good for you because you can normally steal some of their higher attack monsters and use them to put on lethal pressure on your opponent. So Widow Anchor is definitely amazing, mandatory 3 of, all day, every day. You've got Shark Cannon, which is, it feels like one of the weaker cards in the deck. Basically, you can target a monster in your opponent's graveyard and banish it, or if you have 3 different spells in your, if you have 3 spells in your graveyard or more, you can take it from their graveyard and special summon it instead, but it can't attack. This is, of course, it is a very powerful card, right? It's like a DD Crow plus Monster Reborn on a quick play spell, which is insane. But there's just quite a lot of decks out there at the minute that this just does nothing to. It does nothing to Flow and the Rees. It does nothing to the likes of Runic. It's not always useful, which is why we only play it at 1. Again, occasionally this card's going to win you games, and occasionally you're going to draw it and wish it was anything else. So it really is a mixed bag. And lastly, one of the newest Sky Striker cards, Sky Striker Mobilize Linkage. This card is one of the best starters in the deck, as well as having the ability to extend into big OTKs. So if you don't control any monsters, you can send another card on your field to the graveyard and special summon in from your deck a Sky Striker Ace monster into your extra monster zone. And if you have a light and a dark Sky Striker Ace already in your graveyard, the monster you summon gains 1000 attack points. So that's part of why Rose is pretty important, because she's a light monster. So as a light and a dark, this means that whatever monster you summon gains an extra 1000, making them at least 2500, which will help you put pressure on. Because it's a quick play spell, you can use it during the battle phase, and it's not once per turn, meaning you can cycle through all of your Sky Strikers if you so need with the linkage. And that's the main deck. Again, the sort of reissues and everything you can mess around with. You don't have to play the Furion cards if you don't want to. There are certain other cards you might want to include, like Surgical Striker Hamp is basically like a kaiju for the deck. It's just not especially useful right now in this meta. But yeah, there's a ton of cards. You can mess around with reissues. If you don't have things like Upstart Goblin and you don't want to craft it because it hurt my soul doing it, you just find any other sort of generic hand traps or spell cards or anything to fill that slot. Although it's really good. Getting into the extra deck then. So the extra deck is really simple because you're very rarely going to use anything outside of your Sky Striker cards. So we're going to cover this in order of use. The first one you're going to use is Hayate. Hayate can attack directly, right? So it can attack directly, and if it battles, at the end of the battle, you're going to be sending from deck to graveyard a Sky Striker card. Normally, you're going to be sending something like your Mobilize Engage. Why are you sending that? Well, during main phase 2 then, you're going to link your Hayate off into Kigiri. Kigiri then is going to target a Sky Striker spell engrave and add it back to your hand. So you're going to add back the Engage, or if you already have Engage, you're going to add back whatever. Then your Kigiri, you're going to link Kigiri off into Shizuku. Shizuku, at the end of the turn, is going to search your deck for another Sky Striker spell card, so long as its name is different to any other Sky Striker spell that already exists in your graveyard. So basically, you're going to mill one, you're going to grab the one you milled, and you're going to search for an extra one for some follow-up, which is pretty amazing. You also have Sky Striker Ace Kiana. This is mainly a defensive tool that you'll use utilizing the effects of Ray. So Ray being able to quick play link itself off means that during your opponent's turn, if they, let's say you just have a Shizuku, they take out your Shizuku, that'll trigger Ray to resummon itself back to the field, then you can tribute Ray to special summon out your Kiana. And Kiana, when it's special summon, can target a face-up monster your opponent controls, and it cannot attack until the end of your opponent's turn, which basically is just there to grant you a little bit of safety in a pinch. It's definitely worth playing at least one. You're not going to use it very often, but it will save you here and there. And lastly, for our Sky Striker Aces is Zeke. This is a Link 2 monster. Honestly, one of the primary uses of this card is going to be summoning it by stealing one of your opponent's monsters and linking it off of one of your Sky Strikers. So you're going to steal something with, let's say, Widowmaker, then link it off alongside one of your monsters into a Zeke, just to clear up your main monster zones. It also has the ability to, on summon, banish a face-up monster until the end of your opponent's next turn. So like you saw in game number 4, we were able to clean up all of our main monster zones by linking off into Zeke with our opponent's monster. Then Zeke banishes itself until the opponent's next end phase, which means all of our Sky Striker cards can be used again until such a time. So Zeke is really good for clearing up your main monster zones. It can also boost its own attack by 1000 every turn by sending another card you control to the grave, which is kind of nice. Sometimes it is useful, but it is mainly here for that little banish and cleaning up monsters in your main monster zone. As for the rest of the monsters in the extra deck, play whatever you want. I've got Nightmare Phoenix, just for generic link. IP Masquerena, not everybody likes this card, but I think it's decent in a deck that's playing things like Furion. So Masquerena is pretty decent. We've got Unicorn, which is really solid. This is one of the better ones for sure. You've got Access Code Talker for, again, some quick OTKs, linking your way up into Access Code Talker. And the Underworld Goddess of the Closed World is probably not one I would play. I would probably cut this for something else, but the only question is what, because there's so few other cards you want to be playing. Maybe even like a second Zeke, although I've never needed it. I would probably stick to something like an Apollosa for now until I knew for sure, but like I said, you're very rarely going to touch anything in your extra deck that doesn't say Sky Striker in its name. Very rarely. But yeah, that is the full deck and deck profile. Let me bring up the full list yet again here, discarding any changes. You can get to see all of the hand traps and everything all together. So yeah, here it is. This was the finished list that we ended up with after all of our playing and testing. You can test it out, make any changes, any recommendations or suggestions you have. Throw them down below if you feel like we've got something wrong, or if you feel like there's any useful changes or combos that we don't know about. You can either tell me in the comments, or you can hop into the Discord and you can tell me there. But either way, that's been me on Sky Strikers, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.